we don't recognize what our children need in the moment. They start to get really intense. You start to get intense. They raise their voice. You raise your voice even more. That's a recipe for just escalation.
Welcome to the Dad Central Show, the podcast that helps overwhelmed dads conquer stress, build confidence, and become the father their family brags about. Join Drew Solon, a leadership coach and father of 5, and Ed Gow Jr., a fatherhood advocate and contributor to the Good Men Project, as we guide you through the journey of fatherhood. We'll show you how to connect deeply with your family, manage your time and energy better, and master tools to become the dad you want to be. Let's get started. Have you ever tried to calm your child down, only to somehow make their meltdown even bigger? Every dad's been there. Your child is overwhelmed, angry, frustrated, embarrassed, or in tears. And your instinct is to fix it fast. Maybe you offer solutions. Maybe you minimize it. Maybe you get frustrated yourself. But in today's world, kids are facing bigger emotional loads than ever. Social pressure, school stress, digital overload, and how we respond in those intense moments can either build emotional strength or accidentally shut it down. So today's episode is about helping kids with big feelings without making it worse. So this episode is about dads giving simple, practical tools to help their kids regulate big feelings without escalating the situation or damaging connection. So you are watching Dad Central, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. Our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care because Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. Also, we would like to answer some of your questions, so send them in about fatherhood during our shows. Email us at podcast@dadcentral.ca. And as always, subscribe. If you're watching this, subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening, whatever podcast platform you're listening to, subscribe. And with all of that out of the way, Drew, how are you?
Not too bad, Ed. I wish somebody had this conversation with me when I was a new dad, or when my twins were coming into toddlerhood, because some of the information we're going to share today would have been super helpful for me way back then to be able to just manage kids. And so anyways, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think it's a good one.
All right, good stuff. So what we're going to talk about today is why big feelings get bigger, 3 common mistakes that make it worse, and the Dad Central 4-step framework. So let's kick it off, Drew, with why big feelings get bigger.
Well, I think the number one reason is, as parents, we don't recognize what our children need in the moment, or we don't understand what happens when it comes to emotions and children. Some of the things that I've learned along the way is, children, when they're young, they're ruled by their limbic system, which is the emotion center, and their prefrontal cortex of their brain, which is responsible for logic and reasoning and rational thinking, really doesn't begin to develop until the age of 7. Those toddlers, they are balls of emotion and they're ruled by it. And so, the big feelings get bigger when we don't recognize what's actually going on, and that the emotions of our children are really what needs a space, and they need a name, and they need to feel validated and empathized and understood in order to help our children work through those things. And so I think that's why we'll see sometimes bigger explosions, because they're not given a proper name or a proper outlet or a proper understanding or feeling understood that it's safe for them to actually feel those emotions. Then there's the reality that, this idea kids have this fight, flight, or freeze response. It's kind of the normal, like life-saving response, right? Way back in the day, a tiger jumps out of the woods. Well, your body has to immediately respond to save your life. The reality is most of these day-to-day interactions are not life and death situations, but our nervous systems, especially when in young children, learn to respond that way if we don't teach them something different. So the most important thing is that logic that we all have as adults does not work when our children's emotions are high, or really in anyone's emotions are high. If you've dealt with an adult who's sometimes tantruming like a toddler, you can't reason with them, right? That's not what's going to help in the situation with our children either. So ultimately what matters most, and I remember this from our podcast episode way back when with Dr. Stuart Shanker, is that we have this ability to co-regulate for our children, meaning that if they don't have the prefrontal cortex, our job is to be their prefrontal cortex for them until that develops or as they do. So when they're young, our calm really helps create calm in them and produce a pattern of knowing how to become calm through intense, big emotions. And so, summary is our calm regulates their storm. So these are some of the things that I've learned along the way, that why big feelings sometimes get bigger when we ultimately want them to get a little bit smaller.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Just want to add on what Drew shared, that many times logic doesn't work when emotions are high. So realize that that can happen. So good setup by Drew. And he's going to continue on talking about 3 common mistakes that make it worse. Drew?
Actually, there's 4 that we're going to talk about.
But 4, all right.
Yeah. First one is, minimizing or dismissing, right? So, a child is, upset. Let's say my toddler, my 2.5-year-old does not want to get into her car seat, right? And really it's because she wants her boots off. And so I could minimize or dismiss, no, that's silly. It doesn't make any sense. You just get in the car seat, right? And most parents would be like, the reality is, to her, in her world, that boot is a big deal. So a simple response is, you really want your boots? Yes. And so you really want your boots off right now, don't you? Yes. And so the more that I can name or label or put out there what it is that she truly wants, she literally immediately calms down. I mean, this is the stuff that I wish I knew way back when, but now with our youngest, Ayana, it works like magic. You simply just need to name, but you don't want to minimize. But that happens a lot though in parents. So it's not a big deal. No, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't, we don't need this. It's not important right now. In our world, it's not, and it doesn't make any sense, but in their world it is. So that you don't want to minimize it or dismiss it. You need to acknowledge it. Another error we'll say is fixing too fast. So, right, you see there's a problem. Okay, well, just take your boot off. And sometimes that backfires. Sometimes I try, and so let's say I know she wants her boot off. I just pull the boot off. She freaks out because she doesn't want the solution. She wants to be the one that does it. She wants to be independent, and she wants to have the autonomy and be respected that she can do things. And so this idea of jumping in to fix it and to remove the problem and get it out of the way can sometimes be a mistake that escalates even further. A third mistake is this idea of matching their energy. They start to get really intense. You start to get intense. They raise their voice. You raise your voice even more, right? They start getting angry. You get angry back at them. They start uttering threats. You start giving bigger threats. That's a recipe for just escalation. So that's another big mistake. And the fourth one is this idea of rescuing. Rescuing is very similar to, I'll say, fixing too fast, but it's more around the lines of, there should be some acknowledgement or recognition that, there's accountability for how you're behaving, but you don't want to and rescuing happens when you say, I'll use a personal example. So my daughter wanted these special nails for her birthday. I gave in and I was like, okay, we'll get them for you. Turns out she really didn't like them. And so I had told her before, this is your one time. I'm not going to get you more nails after this. This is just because I don't really believe and fully support this idea of these fake nails. My mother, in her desire to help, Jada went to her and said, I don't like my nails. And right away, my mom said, well, I'll get you a new set. That's rescuing. And so I know it's not exactly dealing with, but my daughter had big feelings about not liking the nails, but she got rescued by her Nana when I don't think she should have been rescued. And truthfully, you're taking away the accountability of, she had the opportunity to actually change her nails there, but she chose not to. So that'd be an important learning point. You can speak up when things aren't going the way you want them, and that will help avoid this situation that you're in now. But when you rescue, you take away that opportunity for the child to learn. A little bit of a side, but I think rescuing causes big feelings to get a little bit bigger, but also doesn't teach them accountability.
Good stuff. I don't have anything else to add because lived experience in reality time. That's fantastic. Let's get to the Dad Central 4-step framework.
Yeah, so I'm going to give the 4 steps just quickly, and then we'll talk through each one of them, and I'll try and give an example. So number 1 is listen. Number 2, label the feeling, not the behavior. Number 3, empathize. And empathy is not agreement. Empathy is, I know what it might feel like to feel what you're feeling. And number 4 is you want to get curious and learn to coach after everyone's calm, not in the middle of the storm. Okay. So, I mean, you can get curious during it, but you don't coach until after everything's done. So let's walk through this in terms of number 1, listen. You got a toddler. I'll give the example of Eliana trying to get in the car seat. I'm hearing what she's saying, and she wants the boot off. So I'm looking her in the eye. I'm repeating, you want your boot off? I'm repeating what they're saying. I'm acknowledging, okay, I hear you. You want your boot off. Simple. Like, look them in the eye, repeat what they're saying, and acknowledge what you hear. Number 2, you can then label the feeling, again, not the behavior. You feel sad that your boot's on, or you feel frustrated that you can't take your boot off, or something to that effect, right? One of the simple ways you can label, if you're not sure, is you can use these 3 phrases. It sounds like, fill in the blank. It sounds like you feel sad, or it looks like you feel sad, or it seems like you feel sad. And Phil, it doesn't really matter if you get the emotion word right, the feeling word right. What matters is that you've put it out there into the open, and the child can actually reflect or think or even acknowledge and respond to the fact that you are seeing, you're labeling what they might be feeling. Again, it doesn't have to be perfectly right. Just pick a feeling word. It looks like you're frustrated, and put it out there. Or it seems like, sounds like. Again, it looks like, it sounds like, it seems like. Simple labels. Step 3, empathize. My toddler wanting her boot off, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like -25 outside, yet she wants it off. I can understand that. I can see you're really sad, or I can see you're really frustrated. You don't want your boot on. Like, I'm empathizing. I'm understanding her perspective and what she's feeling. And then finally, if this isn't necessary for the Eliana example, but you want to get curious and coach out of calm. If I'm talking about my daughter, I'd get curious. When did you know you didn't really like the nails? Okay, we can talk about that. What were you feeling when you sat there and saw the designs being put on? What would you do next time if you know that you didn't like it? It's kind of like you're coaching, but you're also getting curious at the same time. What made it so hard for you to actually speak up? And then you can come up with solutions. You problem solve together. Okay, well, if you were to do this again, what would you say if you didn't like the design? Or what could you do before you got there to make sure that you were really happy with the design? These are all ways that you can help those big emotions come out, get resolved, and as well help our children learn to problem solve. So the 4 steps, again, are number 1, listen. Number 2, label the feeling, not the behavior. Empathize, and then get curious and coach only after things are calm.
Nice. And before we start wrapping up, and you've given some throughout our conversation, but any additional things in regards to real life application?
Yeah, toddlers, like my daughter Eliana, are relatively easy if you can just put the label on it. You're feeling really frustrated, or you don't really want to go to bed right now. You really want to go see so-and-so. And if that's an easy thing that I can offer. So an example, the other night, she really was, fussy trying to go to bed. And, normally the routine is Kristen will be with her, and then I'll kind of close and I'll put her into bed. And, normally she's usually calm by the time I get in there. I got in there and she was like not calm. And then almost got more escalated. And so really she just wanted a hug from mommy. So I said, well, you want a hug from mommy? Yes, yes. Okay, well, let's go get a hug from mommy. And then we're coming back to bed. And then I took her out of the room, which normally I don't. It's like, we're in there, we're going to bed. I took her out of the room, found Kristen. She gave Kristen her hug, an extra hug as well. I said, okay, you've given mommy your hug. Now we're going to bed. And we went straight to bed. So it's relatively, I'd say, easier if you can just find ways to navigate and provide some support or resources for your toddlers. Whereas teens, it gets a little more, I'd say, complex. And I've got teen girls, and there's a lot of big emotions, and there's a lot of things that I think are not brought to the surface unless you're willing to put in the time to listen a little bit deeper, as well as give a little bit more time for them to be able to process and then come to you, or even asking just a very simple open-ended question. And so I think as teens get older and the challenges they face get a little bit more complex, we need to be a little bit more astute and a little bit more, I'd say, a little more patient in allowing our teens to work through some of their feelings. And well, as we want to make them to feel very safe, I'd say. I think we tend to want to just direct and point them, hey, here's what you got to be doing right, as opposed to being more curious and just allowing them to almost tell us what's important. And then we can just ask questions to help them self-discover, which I think helps them feel a little bit safer, as opposed to us, oh man, Dad's just going to tell me what to do. Like I don't even want to bother asking him. So I think those are some thoughts I have around the real life application and the differences between younger kids versus older kids. At the end of the day, you want to just continue trying moving towards more connection, more openness, and more helping them feel like they can talk to you without being judged, criticized, ridiculed, or just shut down, because that's going to continue to create greater distance and cause them to actually end up having more, I'll say, bigger emotions that they have to deal with on their own, as opposed to having the support of a parent.
Excellent. So that is a wrap. Let's do a little recap. We talked about why big feelings get bigger. We also talked about 4 common mistakes that make it worse. Then we talked about the Dad Central 4-step framework, and we ended off with some real life applications. So some key takeaways today. Emotional intensity is not defiance. It's dysregulation. I got that out there. Connection reduces chaos faster than control. Then your calm presence teaches emotional strength more than any lecture, and you don't have to fix every feeling. Just help them move through it. Drew, what's the resource we're offering our family today?
I think the resource is our Dad Mentor Father Leader community. At the end of the day, growing in your capacity as a father, as a leader, happens much better when you're in community with others who are also working towards that, as well as the great guidance. We've got our Connected Dad course, which is built off our Dad's Roadmap as a foundation within the community that you only have access to through the community. So to me, Dad Mentor is our best next resource.
That is good stuff. Going to shut down today's episode with this statement. Dads, when you stay steady, you're not just stopping a meltdown. You're building emotional security that lasts a lifetime. So as always, want to say thank you for giving the most important thing, your time, to share with us today. And as always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll chat with you soon. Be well and keep the faith.